Hi, this is Adam Mattera, and you're listening to Loose Lips.
Hey, Chris, how are you?
What's up there, Ike? How you doing?
I am good, hanging in there. Fall is here.
It is a little chilly out there today.
Yeah, I was in the city last night, and I am feeling it.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to the winter, but
no,
it is what it is. We'll make the best of it.
We sure will. So just so everybody knows, you are listening to Loose Lips. Our co-host, Tim Moss, isn't here tonight, but we have my very good friend who just happens to be a Sheena Easton fan as well. Hold it up for me, Chris, because I can't get it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can't get my senses right. There we go.
So thrilled Chris, to be here.
Thank you so much. I know you stepped right in, and you are going to be an amazing co-host with me. I just know it.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to our guest tonight.
I know.
And the topic that we'll be speaking about, and of course, talking to you, Ike.
Yeah, well, we've been talking to each other for what, 20 years now?
20 years.
20 years.
We were just 5 years old.
We were in the hospital when our mother gave birth to us.
That's right.
So everybody knows our show is sponsored by Überlube, a wonderful premium lubricant. You can find all their products on Überlube.com. They even have travel size for people on the go like me. But Überlube.com, we love them. They support us, and we are very grateful. And Chris, how was your week? Like, you having a good week?
So far, so good. I told you.
So far, so good.
I always work it in. Ask anyone who knows me.
Yeah.
Sheena Easton gets in everything. Yeah. I was telling you, though, I did have a little bit of a mishap. I decided to watch this documentary called Game Changer about eliminating meat from your diet and the benefits of it. So in typical Chris fashion, I went out the next day and bought every vegetable that you could possibly eat and decided that I was going to eat it all that day. And so yesterday I had a bowling ball of fiber in my stomach. But I'm feeling much better now. And I learned another lesson on moderation.
Well, I did the General Motors diet. Do you remember that?
No. What was that?
No, this is honestly, this is real. So General Motors gave their employees this diet to clean out their system. And like the first day is strictly fruit, like melons, a lot of melons. And you can eat as much as you want all day. And then the second day is vegetables like you did, all the vegetables you can eat. Third day is vegetables and fruit. So I did this diet 5-6 years ago, and I lost 15 pounds.
All right.
I did it again in June. I lost only 10, but the diet is amazing. You literally lose the weight in 7 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you eat a lot of melons.
Well, the first day and the third day, then the fourth day, I don't even want to talk about it. I'm going to gag.
Okay.
Which is so odd for me. Milk and bananas. So
That's it all day?
All day, milk and banana. So I substituted it. I used lasagna.
Of course. Special recipe.
Which is why I didn't take the additional 5 off.
That's all right. 10 is good. 10 is a good amount. That's pretty quick.
We got a lot to go since that pandemic, that bitch. Oh.
Yeah. We all gained a little bit during that.
Yeah. But I'm very excited. Our guest has an impressive career. He has interviewed celebrities like George Michael, Janet Jackson, Liza Minnelli, Mariah Carey, and the list goes on and on. He was the editor of the UK publication Attitude, where he secured iconic covers of artists like Elton John and Madonna.
Yes, and now he's producing many CD reissue projects for Cherry Red Records, which includes his recent work, an introduction to the re-release of Sheena Easton's category. This is the definitive collection. The definitive singles collection, 1980 to 1987. and of which there's more to come, and we will discuss. His resume is long, and we are going to chat all about it.
Please welcome Adam Mattera.
Hi there. How you doing?
Welcome to Loose Lips, Adam.
It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I am so, and I know it's really late for you over there.
Yeah, just to explain to everyone, he's the accent everyone can hear is Brooklyn accent, but he's actually in London, so live from London with us.
Yes, live and direct. Yeah, it's midnight here, so I've perked myself up.
Well, you look good.
Good.
You look good. I need your secrets. So you were born and raised in the UK?
Yeah. I was born here, like half Italian, half English, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, and I've lived in London pretty much my whole adult life. Yeah, grew up in a little place called Torquay, which I doubt would be on your radar.
No, but I will be looking it up.
Yeah.
How far is that from the West End?
Oh, wow. I mean, a couple of 100 miles.
Okay.
100 miles. Yeah, it's right down the end near Cornwall.
Is it like the countryside or is it more rural?
Oh, yeah, it's more rural. There's cows. There's lots of cows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that kind of vibe. Yeah. And then I came to the big city with $5 in my pocket and a dream.
Oh, my
God.
God.
Did you
Good
always
for
know?
you.
I mean, just to kick off, did you always know that you were going to be in the industry in terms of writing about music and working in music projects and things like that? Was it something you always dreamed about as a kid?
Oh, yeah. It was definitely something I wanted to do. It was definitely something I intended to do. But I don't know. Things just things just develop step by step. Right. You try the first thing and it works, and then you try the next thing. But I remember when I first came to London, and wanted to start writing for magazines, and was like working for like a job as an intern, like in PR actually, like a sort of intern type thing, so not being paid, but trying to desperately get something published. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing it for about the best part of a year, and nothing was happening. And a friend of mine sat down and said, "You're wasting your time. Just give up, because it's never going to happen. Why are you wasting this time like trying this thing's never going to happen?" And I thought, they're right. I mean, it's been a year. And then it was literally within about a week of that I got my first thing published. I thought, actually, maybe this can happen. And so, and then this was like the early 90s. So I started writing for different magazines, like as a freelance journalist.
Do you remember the actual first piece that was published? Or?
I do, but it was a live review of, do you know an artist called Julia Fordham?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I went to see a gig. I went to see a Julia Fordham gig for her album Porcelain, and I wrote a review on Spec and sent it into a magazine called Record Mirror, and didn't hear back, and then checked the magazine when it came out. It was a weekly, and was flicking through it the next week, and then it was in there. And I hadn't actually been informed. I remember going, "Oh my God!" It was shock. It was like shocking to me.
Yeah.
No money.
Yeah, did they pay me? I honestly can't. They would have paid me, but it wouldn't have been. There was some nominal fee. But then once that happened, once I had one thing published, then it helped open the doors, obviously, because rather than going to other people and saying, "I've never done anything before,"
right?
Now you are a published writer.
Yeah, there was thing, and that gave me the sort of opportunity to then, when it really sort of began for me, was working for a magazine called Echoes, which was like a weekly black music newspaper.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It was actually a newspaper, like a physical, like a broadsheet newspaper when I first started working, weekly. And I started working with them, and then I eventually got a full-time job with them. And that's when all the great opportunities came.
What year was that?
I think that would have been 1992. Yeah.
Wow.
Were they still referring to it as black music? Because in the US we had the black music charts up until about 1986 or 87. And then they switched it over to R&B, just because there were many white artists that were also making music that appealed to that demographic.
Yeah, well, the reason, yes. So the magazine was actually, before I worked, it was called Black Echoes, and changed its name just to Echoes.
Okay.
But it was referred to as, the strapline was, the UK's leading black music weekly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was, but the word about R&B, yeah, all those terms were kind of like interchangeable at that point.
Sure.
Yeah.
And did you always love R&B? Was that your primary love of music, or did you love all different types of music?
Pretty, quite broad, but R&B was really especially at that time, the music was coming out at that time. That was where my main interest was. Absolutely, yeah. And the great thing about working for Echoes was that there were different people that wrote that had different specialisms. So like somebody wrote about reggae, somebody wrote about dance music. And so the music I liked, there wasn't often any competition in the office about who would do Janet Jackson. Like if there was an opportunity to interview, say, Janet Jackson,
right,
it'd be like, oh, you can do it. No one else was interested.
Wow.
There wasn't like where there was a little bit of a thing was like people like Luther Vandross. Like the editor loved Luther and loved and the more like old school.
Right.
Well, so I rarely got to interview those people, but all the kind of, I guess, younger at the time artists and new, so the Mariahs, the Janets, Prince. For a while.
So your first interview, was it prior to Attitudes or?
Yes, this is way before Attitude.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And who was the first famous celebrity that you interviewed?
The first like really big name was Mary.
Yeah, that really was like, how did I get this person? My God.
Mary J. Blige, and that was kind of within. Yeah, so there might have been one or two before. It was quite quick, and basically what it was a trip to New York, because back then the record labels. Really, what was so fantastic about that period in the 90s was there was still a lot of money in the record industry.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
If they were launching a new act, you would get sent. Often it would be like, we're in London, so they want to get a cover with Mary J. We'll send some journalists. So I got sent to New York. So it was a trip to New York as well.
Wow.
And they were just launching her. And I remember getting sent to New York to interview Mary J. Blige and being really nervous about it. Like, oh my God, the pressure. I've got to write a cover story. It was my first cover story as well. Wow. And
But what an interesting topic, right? For a first, Mary J. Blige has such an interesting background story. And
oh yeah, it was interesting. She was different. She was really different. That was a point when Mary had just started, and she was not sort of used to doing me. She's a very different artist now. So it was quite a tough gig.
Was she guarded?
Yeah, she was. She did the entire interview under a while having her hair done.
Mm-hmm.
I would have said, "Was she a bitch?" That's what I would have asked.
She couldn't. I remember she couldn't understand much. She was like, she couldn't understand a word I was saying.
Yeah.
My English accent was like, and there was it was a difficult one.
She might have been a little annoyed at you.
Yeah. So it was a bit in at the deep end.
And I'm sure she had a shiv in her pocketbook.
But fun. So that was the first big one, and that was a trip to New York as well. So that's great.
Oh God! And then from there, you secured photo shoots with David Beckham, George Michael. How did George Michael come about?
Well, so later when I was working, I started working later in at the very end of the 90s. I started working at Attitude, and I became the editor of Attitude. And then it was all about trying to get the big cover names, because we wanted to have celebrities on the cover. And David Beckham in particular was one. He still is a huge star. At that time, though, he was like one of the big names we were desperate to go for. And it took such a long. It was years of going back and forth to the publicist trying to get it. And eventually after a couple of years, it happened. And I think they were doing a couple of different magazines at the time. On the same day as us, I think they did Cosmopolitan. So they were doing a women's mag and a gay lifestyle mag.
Right.
We were both we went to Manchester to do the shoot, and there was loads of people. Victoria was there, obviously.
And may I just add, he is an award-winning editor for that. You won an award, and you won against some stiff competition. The Men's Health magazine,
Yeah.
For it wasn't a huge budget you had working with, right? For Attitude?
No, it wasn't. That was what was quite. Yeah, no, we really didn't have a big budget at all. So it was so.
So how were you able to secure these big names? Like Ike had mentioned George Michael, and I think you had done the first interview with him where he was out at that point, right? Publicly. Was that his first interview for a gay magazine?
Yes, it was.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it was.
So how did you land that?
That was beyond, like, in terms of my favorites, that would be right up there.
Wow, good.
Because George Michael being one of the people really at the top of the list, because he was such a star and such a kind of talent, and very not reclusive, but like in terms of interviews, he just didn't do that many interviews. Mm-hmm. And so that was another one that took a long time, and happened actually when his last studio album came out, Patience.
Yes.
Was that 2002 or 2004? Somewhere around there. I can't remember exactly. And that was amazing. Actually, he had already, George, I'll just call him by his first name.
Yeah, that's all right.
Magazine one. I remember one time the first time I spoke to him, he phoned up the magazine and asked to speak to, this voice came on. It was like, "Hi, it's George Michael. Can I speak?" And I was like, wow. "Yeah, who is this really?" It's like, "Yeah, who is this really?" Like,
yeah, right.
And I was out, and it was really, we had a whole conversation where at no point did I believe it was him.
Right. You're waiting for them to drop the joke.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, this is somebody pulling a prank. Absolutely. And he'd phoned up because we'd done an article in the magazine about an American writer had written a feature about gay runaways and like a charity group that was helping. He had read it and was interested in getting in contact with them and wanted to donate.
Oh, wow.
As became evident after he died, he was constantly kind of under the radar, donating charities and doing all that altruistic stuff. And so he wanted to get in touch to find out how he could help. Makes sense in retrospect, but at the time, this guy phoning up artists, I was like, there's no way someone as famous as George Michael is going to ring me directly. And if it was him, his publicist would probably have rung first to warn me and say, you're going to call. That didn't happen, so I just didn't believe it. Although towards the end of the conversation, I started thinking, oh, maybe it is. Well, it could be him. It doesn't sound like him, but no, not him. And then as soon as the call was over, I phoned up his publicist, left a message and they called back and yes, it was him. And I was like, I'm embarrassed because I spent the whole time going, it's not you.
Yeah. He started to believe it. Yeah.
And so then it was a couple of years later when actually, it must have been a year or two after that, we actually did the interview for the cover. And he was fantastic. I mean, it was one of those situations where you go in, as often it is with a big star, and you're told you only have 30 minutes.
Right.
You know, and so you're a bit tense, like, how can I get on my...
Yeah. And
then it just kept going. And I remember we were going for about an hour, because I was like recording on a cassette at the time, so you keep turning the cassette.
Yeah.
You're very aware of the time. And I'm like, we're on our second cassette already. How's this going? And the publicist came in and said, we have to end now. And and George was like, no, just keep going. They locked up and left. And we were there for about 3 hours.
Wow.
Talking. He was so open and honest and intelligent, you know. He was everything you want from an interview, and just like, really the best, actually. So, yeah.
Well, okay, well, so that's good. So you got the best. Who was the worst?
Oh my God, who was the worst? Well, the Mary J experience was bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was partly because I was the pressure I felt under. It was the very first big one I had to make it good, and it just wasn't.
Right.
I think I was nervous and rubbish.
Yeah.
Everything. Was anyone that was really bad? I don't know. What you would find sometimes is, without naming, some people you realize you're getting the shtick.
Yeah.
So like you're just getting this is the same interview this person has given to everyone else.
Yeah. Right.
Thing they want to say, and that's all they're going to say.
Yeah.
When that happens, that can be a bit frustrating because you want to get beyond that.
Yeah.
Like in the George Michael thing, I mean, for the first 20 minutes, I felt that's what was happening. It was just like I wasn't really getting pat answers, and I was like, but at a certain point, basically once he lit up of his first joint,
right?
I
love this.
Surprisingly, at that point, things got a little bit looser.
Yep.
Yeah, and and so we just ended up, like, the subjects just went all over the place: his childhood, his parents, feelings about his sexuality, his music, So that was like the ideal one, when you have someone that's willing to be open and honest. Boy George was always great for that as well.
Really?
Yeah, he was always very honest and funny, and when I was at Attitude, he was somebody that, like, we had constant there's a lot of interaction with him. He's always doing stuff for the magazine.
He's very quick.
Yeah.
Very quick.
Yeah, really sharp and hilarious. Yeah, brilliant.
So basically, you're lighting up a joint with every flip of the cassette.
Here
you go.
So you didn't want to give a name. I get it. But perhaps maybe one of the artist's songs started with "Open Your Heart." Maybe "Get Into the Groove."
Well, I didn't actually interview the Madonna situation. What was interesting about the Madonna situation was another artist we were trying to get for ages and ages, but on a weird, like, I didn't get to meet Madonna. I didn't do that because on exactly the same day that Madonna happened, Elton John happened. Like some weird twist of fate. I must find out what that actual date was, because there must have been some weird astrological thing going on, because we were trying, as you can imagine, Madonna was again another one at the top of the list, if not the top of the list, I guess, in terms of the the audience. Yeah. And she was doing Confessions album, and the day that happened, it ended up being the same day that Elton John agreed to do an interview about his forthcoming civil partnership at the time with David Furnish.
Wow.
In New York. So I flew to New York to do the Elton John cover shoot.
Okay.
While Madonna happened on exactly the same day in
So did you choose Elton over Madonna? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I did.
You did, because you're the editor.
Yeah.
Are you actually assigning the people who are interviewing and doing the photo shoots and as the editor? Okay.
Yes, exactly. And so the thing about the Madonna thing was there was no photo shoot. It was publicity. So there wasn't a need for me, that someone could go there, interview her, and do it.
Okay.
And so it was more self-contained. It didn't really require me to be there. But the Elton John thing was such a production because there was an interview to be done. I didn't do the interview. I went there to make sure everything else was running smoothly, because we had a photographer, I can't remember his name, a guy who had done stuff for Vanity Fair, was doing a shoot, and they were very specific in advance that we only had literally 15 minutes to do the photo shoot.
Right.
And there were so many elements that could go wrong that it felt like I really needed to be there for the Elton John one. And it did go wrong. We went there, we flew to New York. I think because it was a rail company as well, we were paying for that as well. So we had the budget was, it was difficult because we had to fly there and pay. And so there was a lot of stake in a way. And Elton was amazing. We went and we met the day before. We said hello. The day I think there was a show at Madison Square Gardens or something the night before, or that was something I don't know. There was a whole lot of stuff going on. But I remember the day before, I got a phone call from his publicist at the time, or his manager, saying it's off. Elton doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to do it. So it's off. And I was like, oh my God, it can't be off. Guy from Vanity Fair that's doing this shoot, and we've got this, and we've flown over here, and it's it can't be. So I was like, I don't know what to do. So I just thought I'd pretend I didn't get this call. So we just turned up.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's great.
I just thought, what else are we going to do? There's no point in just right. I'm just going to turn up at the hotel as arranged and just see what happens. And it happened. And I knew that history of, and also like
you saw the documentary Tiaras and Tantrums.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I kind of have a sense about how mercurial things could be.
Absolutely.
Right.
And how the weather can change, as it were. So maybe at that moment, maybe that had happened. I don't know. All I knew was I was there to sort this thing out, and I wanted it to happen. And it was such a...
And that's why, one of the reasons why you won Editor of the Year. Because you make decisions like that, and that's what you have to do. You have to just go with them, those decisions.
Yeah, I guess in retrospect, I mean, you just sort of work these things out. You're in a situation, and you just think, "What am I going to do?" And
right.
That I remember that was a weird day. That was because it was literally getting a phone call, then phoning up and finding out has the Madonna thing happened, phoning the UK, and just feeling this is all going on. All these plates have to be kept spinning.
Crazy.
So it's it's exciting as well as being pressurized. But that was one of
exciting, and I'm pretty sure stressful too.
Oh yeah, stressful. But I must say that Elton was amazing when we actually did do it. And again, it was one of the things where they said 15 minutes for photo shoots, but when you're actually doing it, Elton came. He had done the interview; it had gone really well. He was in a great mood, and so he was really chatty, cracking jokes. And him and David were totally up for doing the photo shoot, and it wasn't. They weren't watching their, clock every 5 minutes. I think we had about half an hour at the end, and we got everything we needed.
You got them on a good day. That's good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it was great. They didn't have to do that, Like a lot of the people that did, attitude was kind of. I think what happened was the perception. It was a different time then in the this was like the early 2000s. We built a reputation as being this kind of cool gay magazine, and so there's a certain credibility for people. Once you get one person, it's a similar thing to what I was saying before about, I guess, like when you get one review, then people pay. Then as a writer, people start paying attention to you, and then once you get one big name, and the first big name that I got as when I was working at Attitude was the Spice Girls. Once you get one, then it helps, the momentum of actually take us seriously,
Word of mouth.
Up till then, the magazine didn't do photo shoot. It would do buy a photograph and do a syndicated interview or something, but then it was starting to we need to get exclusives. We need to do our own photo shoots if we can. We need to do our own interviews, and this is how we build the brand, kind of thing. Yeah, so that was Attitude.
Wow,
that's great.
Yeah, it was kind of it was an amazing time, really.
Yeah, we had to think about Elton John, George Michael, and you even had Liza Minnelli.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, Liza Minnelli as well.
Was that around the Pet Shop Boys collaboration, or was it after that?
What was it for? Could it have been an album called Liza's Back? It was one of her albums.
Aren't all her albums called Liza's Back?
Liza's Back, yeah.
Liza's back and married to another gay guy.
Yeah. Liza's back again.
Yeah.
She was. I mean, Liza was amazing. Yeah. Of course.
Iconic.
I realize I'm just saying everyone's amazing, but it's like you're meeting a kind of
character.
I mean, she's a living legend.
Cartoon character.
Right.
Yeah, a living legend and larger than life, and she totally lived up to exactly what you'd expect her to be.
Yep.
She's been playing that part forever, and she knows what she's doing. And the two things I remember about Liza the most, it was in some really fancy schmancy hotel. I remember that somewhere in London. I can't remember which one it was. Probably the Dorchester or something. And the two things I remember is at one point she was like, we started talking about Studio 54. There was this big photo book, some big sort of coffee table photo book that someone lent me of Studio 54. And I thought, to take to the interview and flick through certain pages and go, do you remember that? And there's something of her, Hulk, and I don't know, Bianca Jagger probably.
Wow.
The whole thing was there. Andy Warhol, a photo of them all sat together somewhere in Studio 54. And I was like, do you remember this? Do you remember it? And it was a black and white photo. And she was like, sure, that was a blue dress I was wearing. And it was so-and-so's party. We had just been to, and she's like, she recalled the entire scenario.
All right.
And then I was like, and what about Michael? Did you meet Michael? Because I'm sure you met Michael Jackson a lot. And she was like, oh, sure. I taught him the moon. I taught him the
moonwalk.
I don't know the moonwalk.
I hope she's not trying to say she taught him the moonwalk.
We're talking about some dance move. And she was like, the one that goes like this. And she's like,
Probably from all that jazz.
I was going to say she probably told him how to grab his crotch, but that's all right.
Yeah, she sort of had this. Yeah, she stood up and started doing a little kind of.
Of course. Have you ever seen? Is it Kristen Wiig, Ike, that does the imitation of her on Saturday Night Live?
Oh, I don't know.
All right, if you both have not seen it, search for it because it is hilarious. And Adam, you having had met her and just describing that whole scenario, it's perfect. It's spot on to what she does.
I am going to look it up.
I've seen some of those. I remember a friend of mine showed me the Kristen Wiig where she does Ann Margaret.
Oh,
Ann Margaret. Yeah, okay. There's a great one which is the hook of the skit is "Don't make me sing."
Oh yeah. This one is Liza can't stop dancing. She's in her living room and she's dancing from the couch to the chair. It's pretty hilarious.
This is great. Kristen Wiig and those Saturday Night Live sketches.
Oh yeah.
Maybe reassess because those movies she does never really lived up to don't quite show how talented she is. I think a lot.
Yeah.
And in that stuff, she's amazing.
Absolutely.
But you did, when you were working with all these great celebrities, you were in a great time, right? You had all these iconic names. Can you imagine being an editor, a writer, Justin Bieber, Selena Gomez, how do you even I was talking about this with Michael J. Like the iconic performers, nobody could touch them today. So have you had any of that kind of feels like when you're doing an interview with, say, somebody like Justin Bieber? Do you have that energy, then that anxiety that you would get, say, from George Michael or Madonna?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. And I think it was a really, I mean, I haven't done like a Justin Bieber because I wouldn't be the person. I wouldn't be interested in doing it, and even if I was, I wouldn't be the person that would. It just wouldn't make sense, you know what I mean? Because I have no passion for that.
Right.
But, for the time, I have looked back on. Yeah, sometimes I look back on it. In fact, when you did your Facebook post and put the picture with the different people around it, I was like, wow. When you see it all together, these are iconic people.
Yeah.
And and of course, some of them aren't with us anymore. Prince is not anymore.
Crazy.
George Michael's not here anymore. And so you do get a sense of it being a sort of lost. Not a lost, but the time that moment has passed.
It is, yeah.
And I do think, and of course, some people Cher's still around, Madonna's still around, but that sort of golden period, I really do think that you don't get. I mean, like, who are the biggest stars of today? Adele. I've nothing against Adele, and I'm sure that it's very, pleasant music. I'm talking about real star power,
right? Exactly,
and that kind of iconic, the Diana Ross, the Liza Minnelli, George Michael, the Prince, the Michael Jackson, Jack Jackson.
Just don't say Lady Gaga in front of Ike. That's all.
Oh, why do you hate Lady Gaga?
You know what it is? These younger kids today, they don't appreciate what really big voice singers sound like, and they think Lady Gaga is Streisand. Right. So, you put Lady Gaga on stage with Jennifer Hudson, she's going to go home crying.
Yeah, I do think that. I think that Lady Gaga was one of the last, as an exciting sort of. She changed the temperature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She actually, in terms of pushing the envelope, particularly in terms of visual representation in pop.
Right.
Did you change the dial a bit there? And
Did you actually interview Prince?
Yeah.
How was that? Because every interview I saw with him, I can imagine it seemed like it was such a painful experience for him. He was so shy. He got a little better as he got older, but it still seemed to be a lot of work for anyone who was trying to get some information out of him.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really bizarre. That was probably the most bizarre interview I ever did.
Yeah.
Because, and it was very in keeping with how Prince operated. In retrospect, we know, that sort of air of mystique that he generated and sustained around himself was he was very conscious about that. It was like and so the way it worked, and did interviews. I mean, I wasn't aware. Maybe he'd done one or two in the Rolling Stone or something, but barely. So at this point, it was when The Most Beautiful Girl in the World came out, and it's like
90s.
Yeah, he was in London doing a bunch of shows at Wembley Arena, Wembley Stadium, or Wembley Arena, I think. And I was at Echoes then, and we got a phone call. That's right. I got a phone call saying, Prince is doing interviews. You have to be ready in half an hour. Come now.
Oh my God.
Like, what? Prince doing interviews. Come with there's a coach. I think it was a coach of journalists were being taken to Wembley, and we had to assemble like immediately. But you can't record it. And you can't.
Oh yeah, that's right. He never wanted his interviews recorded.
Yeah.
That's right.
So you literally like, oh my God. And again, like I was saying before, there wasn't any, like, I was a Prince fan in the office. I'm going. I took the phone. See ya. It's like, so went to do the thing, go. And then as we start getting towards there in the coach, it's like, you're nervous. Oh my God, I'm going to meet Prince. It's like meeting a unicorn. You know what I mean? It's something it's Prince. It's like you don't have any sort of coordinates for that person. You haven't really at that time as well, particularly, was so sort of distant and untouchable somehow. And they did and there was about 5 or 6 journalists. They chose someone for like a broadsheet, someone from like a men's magazine, someone from this, someone from that, like different areas, different demographics, different publications. Okay. And because we were like the British black music magazine, we got in there, which is fantastic.
Wow, that's great.
And they drew straws as to which order we were going to go in.
Wow.
And so I think I was like 3rd or 4th, and everyone was leaving, it's like, you'd seen people go in, and you'd ask them, well, what's he like? And no, everyone was really tight-lipped because they didn't want to give anything away, and they would start furiously scribbling down the notes because everyone was trying to memorize because you can't record it. So the pressure felt like almost like an exam,
Right.
And people don't want to tell you anything about what they've experienced because they don't want you to take their quotes.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're going in trying to retain what you're trying to remember as accurately as possible everything he says to you, because you can't write it down. You can't take notes in with it. You can't record it. And there was a backstage area which had been done up all with kind of silk. So you go into this like boudoir, and it's all like this, all incense and candles and silk. So it's all like this exotic, fancy, kind of like, what the hell's going on?
Right.
And he emerged, and he's all sort of like
smoothed out.
Yeah, loads of makeup. He's wearing. He was going by the name of the Symbol then.
Oh yes, artist formerly known as. Yeah,
he was the artist formerly known as, exactly. And so. And he definitely had certain things he wanted to talk about. So you could talk about anything you asked him, it would always come back to what you want to talk about. But I do remember saying to him, so what do people call, what if when you phone your mum, what does your mum call you? And she calls me by, she doesn't call me that name. She calls, or something like that. I was trying to get into the whole Prince thing. And he held up the symbol for his name. I remember he had it around his neck and he held it up. So I'd say, this is what I am. It's like, what's this such drama?
Yeah. Well, you wish you had yours on a symbol too. It's like, and that's mine, right? But I was watching. It's funny you say. I was watching Rosie O'Donnell interview him the other day, and it was very strained in the beginning, and then he kind of loosened up a little bit. But it was very hard to get a lot out of him.
Yeah, Dick Clark said it was his worst interview, and if you want to check out a YouTube clip of that, that's painful to watch. That was one of Prince's first TV appearances on American Bandstand.
Oh yeah, what
I mean, you could see the poor guy; his hands were shaking, and because of that, he was acting so bizarrely. Yeah. But then when he would perform, it was like all gone, and the magic was there. And I think, Ike, you made a good point before, just about like what's missing today, in these artists. And I think it's kind of social media has taken out the mystique of every artist that's, in the music industry, the entertainment industry. They have to be connected as much as possible to their fans. And then before social media, it was more about creating that mystery. And then, you had unique opportunities to get to know an artist. Now it's like they have such pressure to expose every single aspect of themselves. So Adam, like you were writing in an era when that was the only glimpse people had, into these artists' lives. So it's really a unique experience and time and era that we will probably never get back.
Yeah. Yeah. The pre-social media era. Yeah. Because now, young artists 24/7, they have to be sort of exposing their lives and and reality TV, I think, is the other element as well that changed the dial on that, in that it pulled the curtain to the workings of the industry.
Right. What goes on in making an artist. Sure.
Yeah. And so it wasn't, it was all about, and if you think about like an artist like Adele, she is someone that could have won, she's an ordinary, that's part of the deal. She's like very accessible and whatever. And like somebody that would have won a reality TV show.
Right.
Or Sam Smith, those kinds of artists. I mean, great voices, but it's a different, different era in that sense.
Yeah.
I think Lady Gaga. I mean, obviously Lady Gaga, Beyonce. There are some people that have that sort of wider level.
Right. There's still something there.
Yeah.
But the star power of the people that you interviewed and you just can't get that again.
Yeah. I think it's
you were very lucky. I'm envious of every interview that you've done. I'm looking at your resume. I'm like, oh my God, he's never going to come on this show.
It's amazing actually when you were even you've been involved in it and you see the pictures and it's probably surreal for you as well. But when you look back on all these really legends that you've been able to just interview and bring a piece of their personalities, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like the very it is amazing. It's kind of amazing to me. It almost feels like another person did that, and I can't quite. Yeah, especially now, like I say, that some of those artists don't, they're gone, like George Michael.
Yeah,
it's like, but but also I think another thing about that, the experience I was just thinking about then was. I remember the very, very first interview I did with a band called History, which no one will remember. They were like a soul-to-soul type band. Being so nervous because I was meeting someone, I had to do an interview, and so like nervous myself. And then you get to the point when you're going to interview George Michael or Janet Jackson or whoever, and you kind of almost have to step away from that sort of feeling of like, oh my God, I'm a fan, I'm in awe,
right?
Because otherwise you couldn't do the job.
Right.
Part of you still help maintains that. So when we were going to, I wasn't like nervous about me interviewing Prince when I met him, but as we were walking to do the interview with Prince, before the interviews happened, at one point we were going through the back corridors of Wembley, and a door opened, and Prince was just stood there and consulted something with some assistant, and then walked away. It was like. And so, Prince is right there. Oh my God! Then you're not prepared. So then it's like your reaction is like, "Oh my God, I just saw Prince."
Yeah.
But then actually, like now you're going to walk in this door and interview him. You're sort of different. Obviously, your persona takes over, and you're not like you're not that person. You're like, it's an interesting experience. Yeah.
Yeah, because in a way, you're performing as well.
Yeah, and you're kind of revved up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of sort of like, because I've got X amount of time on the dial, which sometimes, if you're lucky, like the situation with George Michael, it carries on. But you can't count on that, because somebody will come in, and what would often happen, especially when artists are doing back-to-back interviews, they're doing a day of interviews, they've got slots. Right. So it's like you've got your allocated 30 minutes, and somebody will come in and go, "Can you wrap it up?"
No.
And you go, we just have to do a good thing. Last question. Whatever you do, don't ask about X. You know what I mean?
All right. So have you ever done that? Have you ever just been in a pissy mood, or someone's put you in a pissy mood and you've asked the question that you weren't supposed to ask?
You know what? I would say, I don't think I remember consciously, when I was saying that, the person I was thinking about was Dionne Warwick. Because I remember when I interviewed Dionne Warwick, Whitney Houston had died within the last year or earlier that year. It wasn't long after. And so the publisher said, please don't ask about Whitney Houston. Don't ask what she feels about it. And I think, yeah, every single person going in is going to ask her.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so, what is she going to say? What do you expect her to say? Why do that? And I actually thought, no, I don't want to bring it up. I maybe I will talk about Whitney in some other way, you know, but I certainly not going to ask, oh, do you feel sad? Because, you know, because it's just so insensitive and stupid just for the sake of getting a quote. Says, you know what I mean? It just seems to me. So, but I did sort of like somehow in the conversation want to bring up Whitney as a singer to get to talk about, you know, the legacy of Whitney, but not in such a sort of crass way.
Right.
So I think,
Which is why probably they keep coming back to you, you know, because you weren't being crass and, you know, you were there to interview them and get, you know.
Yeah, good point.
I think certainly when we were, and also for the magazines I wrote for Attitude, it wasn't like a tabloid, you know. So when you, and I speaking to other journalists that worked at different magazines, tabloids, and also sort of like, different kind of like OK magazine or something. They would have an editor that would say to them, make sure you get a quote about X, make sure. Yeah. And they would go in with this pressure. They have to get this particular quote. They have to get them saying something outrageous or talking about their divorce or their marriage or something, you know, that is like salacious.
Right.
And that was never the agenda.
What was the agenda? I mean, for Echoes and for Attitudes, was it the same agenda? Was it primarily about the music, or was the music more of a focus on Echoes and Attitude had a broader focus?
Yeah. So certainly for Echoes, it was all about the music.
Yeah.
So you didn't really ever get into that sort of.
Mm-hmm.
There was no need. Really.
The private life and all that.
Yeah. Maybe if there was something, I can't think of it. But yeah, it was really focused on the music. For Attitude, it was whatever. Yeah. So if it was, it would be about their work, but also, of course, being Gay Lifestyle magazine, it would be about their thoughts about sex, like depending on who it was, obviously. There would always be that, and so the artists that would agree to do the interview, like a George Michael or whoever, they know that's part of the agenda. So if they didn't want to do it,
they won't do the interview.
They won't do it. Yeah.
They wouldn't do the interview because there were people. I can't think of the examples. There would have been people that maybe were a bit nervous about that, and so probably said
right.
But someone like George had been through by that time he had the incident in LA. He had come out. He had done the Outside video, the card on the table, and so he wasn't just willing to talk. He wanted to sort of tell his truth, as it were.
Right.
And so, you know, what more can you ask for, really? You know?
You said you never did interview Luther Vandross, correct?
No, I did. Yeah.
Oh, you did interview him?
Yeah.
For which? For Attitude?
No. What was that? That was for? Oh, sorry. What I said was Yes. What I said was that when often the editor of Chris, his name is Chris Wells, he was the one who loved Anita Baker. So I never got the chance to until one particular occasion. I don't know why, but he couldn't do it. And I wasn't even working there then. I'd left. I was working at Attitude then. And I think there was some date clash or something. And he had interviewed Luther so many times. He'd interviewed Luther more times than you can count. Wow. And I had interviewed Luther once on the phone, I think, but that was never the same.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, as in person.
Yeah. In fact, there's people I'd interviewed on the phone that I even forgot I interviewed. I looked at the old magazine, I was like, did I interview? I never interviewed Paula Abdul. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Oh, Paula Abdul. Like American Idol, Paula Abdul?
Yeah. Because it's a different thing. It's just like.
Right.
But so anyway, I'd done Luther once on the phone, and then I got to fly. Oh, it was amazing, actually. I got to fly for Luther. It was in his house.
Oh, legendary.
Oh.
Yes. And that was, so we flew. It was for the album he did for Virgin.
Dance with My Father?
No. Was it called Only Human?
Okay.
It's called I Know. I think the album's called I Know.
Yeah.
It was like late 90s.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't one of his most successful albums. It's a really good album. And he had just moved into a new house, upstate New York. So I went to, and again, it was when the record company still paid for everything. So me and a photographer flew to New York. We got put up in a hotel, and the next day, a car was coming to pick us up to take us to Luther's house. And we just drove like for miles and miles. And the guy was like the chauffeur was telling us on the way, like he chauffeurs Luther and people from this particular area. What would upstate New York be? It's not Greenwich, is it?
That would be Connecticut.
Greenwich would be Connecticut. Was it the Palisades in New York?
I don't remember. It was at least an hour's drive from the center of New York.
Yes, it might have been Connecticut.
Could be, and it was going out to the country, and there was like an area where the driver was explaining.
Beautiful, right?
Beautiful, yeah. And there was like a gate. You could go on this particular road to get into this area. You couldn't just anyone can go in. It was like gated.
Yeah.
So it was like a separate area where, and he was like, "Oh, that's Don Johnson's house.
Oh.
That's Diana Ross's house down there." And you couldn't even. They were so far away, you couldn't even see them. They were dots because everyone had these huge like
palatial grounds. Yeah.
And it was like, oh wow. And then we go to Luther's house. He had just moved in, and he was doing a TV. When we got there, he was doing a TV interview, just wrapping it up in the other room. And so I was sat there in the kitchen, surrounded by all these boxes of like his stuff. He just moved in, and on top of one of the boxes was like a photo album. And so I was like, well, you know. And I remember like saying, "Oh my God, there's pictures like it's a picture of Luther and Whitney, like just like."
Oh God,
that's BB and CeCe Winans. That's just Dionne Warwick, you know, like oh, put it away. But I couldn't help myself. I was like,
"Yeah, right, just pick it up."
It's right there.
That's crazy.
And Luther was, I mean, you know, another one of the greats, really.
Yeah.
He was most comfortable. This is for Echoes, remember? So it was all about the music.
Yeah, right.
But we did touch on a few other things, but he wasn't that comfortable. Really going there. If you know what I mean.
Yes, totally.
So when he got most animated and when he was most comfortable, it was when he was talking about in his childhood, when he was the fan club. You ran
right, for Patti LaBelle. Yeah.
And when he talked about being a kid and sitting at the back of the Apollo and seeing Dionne Warwick sing for the first time, when he was talking about those childhood memories and his enthusiasm and his passion for that just really came across.
Yeah,
and he was so animated and excited, and you felt that. Yeah. When he talked about his like current life, and you were trying to get a sense of like, there was a real sadness actually.
Yeah,
actually.
It
was real sad, and it was it was quite. I think on that particular album, there was a song called "Isn't There Someone?" about "Isn't there someone I'm waiting for me? I'm all alone." And I asked him about that song, and he was like, kind of saying, "Well, you know, I've lived in this empty house all by myself, and like, you know, it's a great house, but there's no one else here apart from me." It was kind of
depressing.
There was that sadness about him.
Yeah.
I mean, what an amazing talent!
Oh,
right, I know. Another one.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And really coming from a different era where he probably felt pressured not to be himself.
I think
especially with the particular style of music that he was delivering to his audience, you know?
Yeah. Romantic and
sad.
Yeah, and that, like, you know, his fan base wouldn't
accept him. Yeah.
I think
probably right at that time.
I think
probably would have damaged his career, you know.
I think he probably was right. I mean, think at that time when someone like I mean, it's a different audience and a different thing. But if you think about like things are so different now.
Yeah.
Like when was it that Ellen came out on the Ellen Show? Mid-90s?
Yeah.
And they would get bomb threats, you know.
Yeah.
And the advertisers pull. And that wasn't that long ago.
No.
So
and the show did get canceled. I mean, it did.
Yeah, it was a huge show, and suddenly the ratings dropped. Everyone pulled out. The audiences stuck with it, but then they stopped. You know, and it all fell apart. And so there was a real sense that, like, your career, people had to weigh that up if they wanted to be honest about themselves.
Right.
can you blame them for choosing a certain route? I don't know. That's like a personal decision for them.
And now you have RuPaul.
And now you have RuPaul changed
right?
Yeah. And now everyone's a drag queen.
Right.
I mean, who would have ever thought that RuPaul would have changed? It's incredible what he's done.
Yeah.
Oh,
Who would have thought he would have been more than a one-hit wonder?
Yeah.
I mean, he's built such
he's cranking out some great songs, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there was that dip, wasn't there? There was people sort of forget. There was like Supermodel and whatever, and then he had his talk shows and whatever. But there was a period where it felt like, oh, maybe he had his brilliant moment gone. But then Drag Race has just literally taken over.
Oh yeah,
right.
Completely.
Everywhere in New York City, every bar, every nightclub, it's literally 7 nights a week drag.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm assuming in London as well.
Oh yeah, and literally you can't. There's so many spin-off shows now, isn't there? It's like there's always at least one on, if not 2, if not now maybe 3 now. There's Canada, there's Down Under, there's Italian, there's
everywhere.
I just can't keep up.
Yeah.
They
even have the one now. I think it's called. Is it? Oh, what is it? Is it Dragula? Have you seen this? Where it's more horror, where they do a lot of these competitions that are really outrageous, and they go for the goth, and it's really good.
I haven't seen that.
Oh really?
Whoa. Oh God, you got to watch it.
Do you watch the UK one over there? Do you get?
I haven't yet. Yes, we can watch it, but I haven't watched it yet. But I heard it was really good. Really good.
And what's interesting is you get different. Some better than others. I've not seen them all, but yes, I have.
Who hosts it?
The British RuPaul.
Oh, he does. He does both.
Yeah,
okay.
they don't do all the satellite shows, do they? The Canada one is someone else.
Oh, yeah.
I think he maybe appears on the screen for about 10 seconds per episode.
Right.
The British one, is Michelle Visage and RuPaul.
Yes.
Okay.
How they tape it, fly over for 3 days, shoot the whole thing. I don't know how they schedule it, but they do. They manage it.
And how lucky did she get, huh?
What, Michelle Visage?
Michelle Visage, yeah. She's talented, but I just mean, to have that gig and to have it consistent and steady.
Well, yeah.
Oh, right into money. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, he really was loyal to her. She was his sidekick on the radio show. He had a local radio show here in New York. I don't know if it ever went national, but he was a DJ here in between the hits and Drag Race. And she was his morning sidekick. And so he took her with him when he did Drag Race. So
yeah. But I imagine that also gives him that, it must be for his own confidence, security, to have someone familiar with, and have that sort of bar relationship.
Trust.
It's nice to have that unit when you're going into a new thing, and it works, and it's genuine.
Right.
Yeah.
That kind of rapid fire thing between them, and it's nice to see.